Alright, in this lesson, we're going to look at styling our class components. In our previous lessons, we looked at how to style stateless functional components with an external style sheet, and we looked at how to style a component within a component and not use an external style sheet, which is a much more React way of styling in which components become more self-contained, blurring the lines between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all within a single component, and React is completely okay with that. In this lesson, we will follow the same approach with styling class components. We'll do less instruction, but just make sure that we have the syntax down. We'll begin by going to the Section 3 folder of our course and creating a file for index3.html. We are also going to create another file for an external style sheet. We'll call this main2.css. To grab our starter code for styling our class components, we'll go into our Section 2 folder where we created our shapes components with classes. Let's go ahead and copy that content. Then we'll head back into our index3.html file and we'll paste all of our content into there. Alright, now let's go ahead and open this up in the browser to check our starting point. We have our circle, square, and rectangle components rendering to the DOM with no styling. Our first step in using an external style sheet will be to go within the head tag and create a link tag. We'll then name our main2.css file that we're going to gather our styling from. The next thing we'll do is go into each of our h1 tags and we'll give them a class. Remember, in JSX, class is going to return an error, so we're going to have to use class name instead. So in our first component, we'll have a class name of circle. We'll go down to the square component and we'll give it a class name of square. After that, we'll go to our next component, and in the rectangle component, we'll give a class name of rectangle. Now, let's go into our main2.css style sheet and we'll create our styling. To do this, we'll go ahead and target our three classes by putting a dot before our circle, square, and rectangle class names. Chances are, you can figure out how to make these shapes on your own with properties and values. However, if you didn't know how to do that, you could go to CSS Tricks, and they have a nice article on how to use CSS to create shapes. We'll look at this together and take their properties and values, or you can feel free to use your own. We will start by taking the square properties and values, and then we will bring those back to our style sheet. Let's go back to our CSS. Now, let's go back and grab the rectangle properties and values that we'll need. We'll then return and paste them into our style sheet. Lastly, we'll go to our circle shape and we'll steal its properties and values as well. Now, we'll return to our style sheet and paste those in. We'll go ahead and make some changes to this. I'll go ahead and cut out lines 5 and 6, then for border radius, I'll change it from 50 pixels to 50%. Now, we'll head back to our HTML file. Let's open this up to see if our styling worked. And the result is that our components are styled. Now, we'll move on and style our components within themselves. As we said, a much more React way of styling. We'll return to our Section 3 folder and create a new file called index4.html. Our starter code will come from our index3.html file that we just created. Let's go ahead and copy that, and then we'll paste it in our new file. Now, we're going to convert this external styling for styling within the component. The first thing we'll do is go to the head section of our document and remove our link tag. We'll quickly open this up just to make sure that our components are rendering and that our styling has been removed. Perfect. First, we'll go into our circle component. Remember, rule number 1 states that we need to create a JavaScript object whose properties and values will style our component. We'll create a variable and name it circle style and assign it an object. We'll place this within our render method and code block. Within that object, we'll grab our circle class styling. Let's copy this and head back to our HTML file. We'll paste this within our circle style object. Now, let's go ahead and conform this to fit our rules. We'll begin by removing the px for pixels. Then we need to turn our text into strings. Next, we'll turn our border radius property into a camel case property. We then want to link this JavaScript object to the JSX element we want to style. We have an attribute named style, and we assign it the JavaScript object we want to evaluate. Alright, I did make a mistake here. Do you see it? Take a second. Pause the video and see if you can find it. If you can't, open up the console and see if you can figure it out yourself. Alright. If you didn't see it, I'm missing the comment after the property value pairing of background and red. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this and see if our styling has been applied. There it is. We have our circle. Now, let's go back to our code and finish up styling our last two components. Go ahead and give this a shot on your own. I'll code along in the background in case you need any assistance. If you have this down, go ahead and go to the source code and just copy and paste it in. As always, if you're still learning, type these in over and over. Make those tiny syntax errors. Use the console to figure out what went wrong. Troubleshoot your bugs. That's how you get better. When you're done, go ahead and do one more final check to make sure that all your styling has been applied to all of your components. Let's go ahead and open this up in the browser and take a look. There it is. Great job. If you haven't noticed, we have had a ton of repetition these past two sections. What we are doing has not been React best practices. In our next sections, we are going to start to do much more with much less. See you then.